Hi, this is Towanna Freeman, and welcome to the C-Suite. Today's guest is Dr. Boyce Watkins, also known as the People's Scholar. And we invited him to the C-Suite because we believe that he has a very interesting perspective when it comes down to understanding current news, world news, what's happening in Black America today. And I have some fantastic questions to ask him. I know that he's the right guy for to respond to these questions because these are the questions that are concerning the African American professional, the young men, the young women who are sitting in management positions, mid-level management positions that are aspiring to go to the next level of leadership within your organization. And so we are wanting to ask these questions of, Dr. Watkins, just to shed some light on what he views as what's going on and what we can do differently, how we can better prepare ourselves so we can take advantage of opportunities that are available. We may be a little surprised at his answers, but that's okay. But that's exactly sometimes what we need is a different view, a different perspective. So welcome to the C-Suite, Dr. Watkins. How are you?
I am fine. It's very good to see you again. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Now, we don't have to be formal, so I'm officially out of my formal zone. You
Okay.
are a friend of mine, and I think that you and I both have had this discussion so many times on various levels and different occasions as things have popped into the news. A lot of professionals believe that now or these Obama years was the right time or the perfect time for us to achieve certain levels of leadership, getting into the corporate offices and what they call the corner offices. So and the thing is that it's not really happening. And you know as well as I do that the economy, obviously, there was a huge shift in the economy, and a lot of people are downsized. You have a very high unemployment rate. So, some of my first questions will most likely basically have a foundation regarding the circumstances surrounding the Obama years that we're in right now. But I believe that where we are and how we view what we do differently is super important, whether it's entrepreneurship, which I know you're a fan of, and or just becoming a little bit more crafty or skilled at positioning yourself differently, to where you're not disenchanted with the fact that you're not selected or that you're not put in those places of leadership that you were aspiring to. So my first question is, how would you describe the current climate of African American professionals in corporate America?
I would say angry. I think that there is a large, somewhat silent or at least unheard majority of very angry black middle class people. You're talking about people that went to college, that made good decisions, didn't go to jail, you know, tried to play the game as well as they could, and really fell for what I think at worst could be called the big lie, which is that if you're black and if you're well behaved, everything's going to work out for you. And and that is a what I believe a quick path to a straitjacket. Because first of all, you put yourself in this box and you're trying to you're catering to uh, someone else's ignorance. That that they see black men a certain way, so you try not to behave that way because who you are is not good enough. You need to be somebody else. Okay, yeah, fine. So you do all that, right? And you play that game and you make the right decisions. You code switch. You go to seminars on how to be whatever it is you think you need to be to succeed in corporate America, and then you still see that promotion goes to the white guy down the hall. And so I think that there's a lot of anger there. I see it not just in corporate America. I see it in academia. A lot of young black scholars come out of school and they're so excited about their careers, and they think they're gonna just climb the top of the ladder, and they falsely are led to believe that the reason that their predecessors did not succeed is because they weren't as qualified as them. They weren't as hardworking as them. They weren't as disciplined as they are. And so we sort of think that, look, I'm the first smart Negro that ever existed, which means that, all these other people have failed, but I'm going to be the first one to succeed. So
Yes.
what happens years later, unfortunately, and this happens in corporate America, it happens in law firms, in academia, et cetera, is that you see people become a little disgruntled. You hit your mid 30s, late, early 40s, maybe mid 40s, and and you're not quite where you want to be, and you don't quite know what to do. So I think that If people aren't very clear about who they are, if you don't have a solid, anchor in terms of knowing who you are, knowing that you are somebody, going back to Jesse Jackson's cliche, knowing that you are somebody, even if you don't get that fancy office down the hall, if you don't have that anchor, it can literally drive you crazy. I've literally seen people end up needing therapy because they will be so mad. I knew a guy I talked to not too long ago who literally talked about how he wanted to go down the hall and punch his boss in the face. And I said, I know you're not going to do this, but the fact that you're that angry is bad for you. You're carrying that poison around with you. And I've seen it happen so often. So I would describe it as angry and for good reason.
You know, do you think it's different for men versus women? This
Um,
anger?
Yeah, I think that men process anger differently than women do, but I wouldn't sit here and pretend in the least that somehow the plight of black men is worse than the plight of black women. I think it's different, right? Malcolm said, and I agree with him, that there's nobody more disrespected in America than the black woman, because they get it from white America, then they get it from us. I think, for example, you look in black leadership and you see all these black men that are in these prominent roles: Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Cornel West, Tavis Smiley, Michael Eric Dyson. You name all these people, but where are the women that get invited to those tables? Julianne Malveaux should be in the front of all of them because she's smarter than all of them. She has more education than all of them. So why isn't she out front? And so ultimately, I think women go through a very different kind of oppression than black men do. But there are some areas where women fit a little better than men. I think that when you look at the way men lead, the way men kind of think, the way our testosterone flows, men typically are more comfortable having women next to them as opposed to having another man there that's going to compete with him. Because men compete, right? So if you're a black man and you do fit in that space, you're better off sort of taking that Forrest Whitaker, the butler role, where and I know you and I disagree about the movie,
They don't go
but
there.
but no disrespect to Forrest, he did a good job. I'm sure it's a great movie, but you're more likely to fit if you are a non-threat, right?
Right.
But the thing is, a black man can be a threat just by being tall, just by being smart, just by being assertive, or and God forbid he become aggressive. It's a wrap, right? So ultimately, I think what you have here is a scenario where the family once again is affected because so many black men end up disenfranchised, either involuntarily or voluntarily. Like I voluntarily disenfranchised myself because I said I'm not taking this crap. You're not gonna treat me like a boy. I'm a man, and so you have the men disenfranchised, and fortunately I was able to do okay, right? I went and started my own business, and I'm okay. But I know a lot of people who are disenfranchised who have nothing, and so if you think about this, when the men have nothing to fall back on, and the women are working and succeeding in corporate America and bringing home the bacon, what does that really do to the structure of the family when so many women feel that they don't even have a man that they can really look up to and respect? So ultimately, I think that it is different for men and women, but I wouldn't say it's easier for either group.
You bring up so many interesting points, I'm gonna have to bring you back to cover some of those additional points. But I wanna address the something that you said in reference to um, being in those positions, being angry at the fact that you have not been selected, though you're qualified. You've done everything right. You went to the right schools. You had all the right positions that led up to you being in mid-level management or whatever level of leadership that you are now. And you're knocking on the door of the C-suite, right? And you're knocking on the door to that place where you actually say, this is the grail, right? And it's not happening. Okay, so the anger starts to drop in. Do you find that it is, I don't know how, from your social circle, do you find that majority of the people that are in that position from your social circle, do you find them taking the leap and moving out of those organizations or those structures to follow that path of entrepreneurship? Are you finding them saying, you know what, enough is enough, I'm tired, I have to do something different, otherwise I'm gonna always feel this way? Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing it in some cases, but not in enough cases. I have a friend who wrote a book. She's not black. She wrote a book about entrepreneurs, and her name's Monica Mehta, and she is deeply interested in the neuroscience behind entrepreneurship. What does it take psychologically for you to even want to take those risks of becoming an entrepreneur. And she said, I was really deeply concerned because in the African American community, the proportion of entrepreneurship is far lower than your proportion in society.
Right.
She said there's something there. There's a mental block that where African Americans are just far less likely to go venture on their own. And we talked about that for a little while. And one of the things that did come up is, the trauma that we go through as children as a result of our oppression, the addiction, the abuse, the things that we experience, fatherless homes, etc., that come from that stem right out of racism. What that does is that actually heightens it minimizes the impact of the reward centers of the brain. It actually heightens the risk averse side of the brain, the part that makes you afraid of taking a risk because you're thinking about all the things that can go wrong, as opposed to taking a risk and thinking about all the things that can go right. Right? You're not driven. You're more, so many of us are driven more by fear than by desire. Right? And so I think that in our community, we don't have enough entrepreneurs. I don't think we understand the importance of entrepreneurship in our community, the importance of owning the land on which you stand, and what that means when it comes to obtaining various forms of political and economic power in this country. The civil rights movement gave us certain elements of political power or a semblance of political power, but really political power. I say this, in my book Black American Money, that political power without economic power, it's like having a driver's license when you can't afford to buy a car. In that case, you're only going to get to drive if somebody else gets you a car. You're only going to go in the direction they want you to go. You're only going to go as far as they want you to go. And if they put you in the back seat, then that's where you're going to be too. So ultimately, we have to understand where entrepreneurship fits into that whole scheme of obtaining true equality. And then we also have to learn, the cultural aspect of planting seeds that don't grow overnight, right? If you go work for that big corporation that's owned by somebody else, then yeah, you're gonna instantly see the financial gratification. You're gonna see the status that comes with that. This validation that many of us need, which comes from our oppressor, the validation that we need in order to feel whole and to feel human. I think that's incredibly unhealthy, but a lot of us have that. We feel better about ourselves if IBM makes us a vice president than we do if we go and we teach at an HBCU or something like that, right? So I think that what we have to really think about is, this idea that we have bought into. I think this excessive materialism that exists in America, this sort of addiction to mass consumption, this sort of living paycheck to paycheck, being deep in debt, needing that money in order to survive. Because what that does is when you have an addiction to something, whether it's crack cocaine or money, you're always going to be subject to the whims of the pusher.
Right.
The pusher always has more power than the addict. So ultimately, we become addicted to a commodity that we do not control, which ultimately threatens the security of our community. Yeah. So I think entrepreneurship should be called for. I'm seeing it sometimes, but really what I'm also seeing on the flip side of that is people just sort of surviving. I think Black people, we're wired to survive. I think Black women are the best survivors of all time. And so you'll see the frustration there. And in fact, I think of a friend I know who's a high-ranking official at a big company, but she should be higher. She should be further along than she was. She went to Harvard and got an MBA and all this other stuff. And she's very frustrated, but her manager will never know how angry she is. She'll never really rock the boat too much. And she's very good at kind of working covertly to try to achieve her goals. And if she doesn't get it, she just keeps trying. So I think that that's what we're doing. We're just sort of surviving, which I don't know if that's a way to live. I don't think surviving is the same as living. And I encourage people to try to live a little bit.
Absolutely. And the one thing you are bringing up is really targeted for those professionals who've been in the game a long time, who serve, there are these organizations, these companies, these institutions for years, and they have basically gotten to a point where they're fed up and tired because nothing's working anymore. They can't get any further than they are, right? So what would you say to the college graduate? What would you say to them? Because I know that when a professional, as is, we call them the 40 and fabulous group who are able to kind of make it happen. You see them in Ebony, you see them in Black Enterprise. They're always highlighted as those who made it. They made it. And these are your examples of being able to make it. And so we look at those covers and we're saying, wow, that's where I want to be. These college kids, they look at it and they say, this is where I want to be, because it's a part of the American dream. It's to get the great job, get the nice house, get the great car, get to have the kids, get married and have the kids, whatever, right? So we have this image. So yes, you're right. We feed into that image. So if that's the case, and we know that there are a limited number of positions that anybody can take advantage of in any structured company, what would you tell the young professional as they're preparing themselves to enter the workforce? You know, we're here at the twice elected President Obama. You have this wonderful, glorious image that you can have it all. You can be president. You know, we have all that, right? There's a new vision that has been given to our children. So, what advice would you give to the recent college graduate about preparing yourself for the workforce and how you now be nice, Boyce?
No, I'm gonna be very nice.
Oh God, I think I set my.
You know me, I'm always
Oh
nice.
my
What
God,
are you talking
I
about?
just realized I may have set myself up with. Okay, I know you. That's why
That's
I
all
said.
right. You started the question. You got to finish it now.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, I'm gonna shut up. Go do it. Go ahead. I set myself up.
Okay. Well, I am gonna be nice, and what I will say is this. I think about my daughter that just finished college, and the best advice I can give you is the advice that I give her, right? Or the best advice that I can share is what I share with my own beloved child. And what I told her is that I don't believe you should ever let anybody feed you your dream. You know, your dream has to come from you, and your dream is your dream should be your drug. You know, and it's okay to be addicted to it. I said that on Facebook today, and I just like that because to me I have been very happy when I was happiest as a human being was when I was deeply in love with my dream. You know, and you're working toward it every day. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're floating on a cloud, and you're just achieving these new highs every day, and it's been an absolute fantasy for me. And it's a weird reality because I see so many people who hate what they do every day, and I don't know what that feels like. And so what I told her also was, I said, look, when you go into the world, your goal is to find a way to pay your bills and save for retirement. After you do that, you can do whatever you want. There are a million ways to skin that cat, and there are 999,000 ways to skin that cat that don't involve going into corporate America.
Right.
She isn't the kind of person that wants to sit behind a desk all day, and so I said, look, just find a way to make enough money to do what you got to do, and then go do what you want to do. And so I believe, for example, that every African American, every black child especially should know how to start their own business, even if you work for somebody else. That's what I believe. Because even if you get a good income from a corporation, that money can cut off in a second. You never become dependent on somebody else to feed your children. So that means you don't live paycheck to paycheck. You don't want to spend your whole life in debt. You don't want to get all your money from one source. I mean, that right there is fundamental. I think also beyond that, I would be hesitant to allow anybody to define you. If someone asks me like, "What do you do for a living?" I don't know what to tell them. I can tell them where I went to school and what I studied, but I
Right.
don't know what I do for a living. I get up and I write articles and I do interviews and I go give speeches and I'm just Boyce, and that was a very deliberate, conscious decision. I had to kind of escape from the plantation, and like every other runaway slave, they were trying to cut my foot off. And so I mean, so to speak, not to belittle what real slaves went through. I mean, there's no comparison there, but it's similar in that you get in trouble for being a bad Negro, no matter what level on the totem pole you are. And so what I would just say to that young person is, figure out what your dream is, figure out the business model behind whatever it is you want to do. And I think that being an entrepreneur is great. I also think people should understand that financial freedom is not the same as being rich. It
Right.
doesn't, you don't have to be rich to have financial freedom. It just means being able to pay your bills without having to kiss somebody's ass. Excuse my French. If you can pay your bills and save for retirement, and you don't have to kiss up, you don't have to fold, you don't have to do anything unethical, then you're free. You're able to live free. And I don't think there's anything more precious than freedom. It's like the best gift certificate in the world that you can use in any store. Like freedom is something that everybody can value. So that's the best advice I can give them, is not to say you should go do this and go do that. It's to say try to find a way to be free.
Right.
And if they can figure that out, and that's not a that's not an educational process. It's not a professional endeavor. That's a spiritual journey. finding out who the heck you are, and then finding a way to fit that person into the world in which you live. When you do that, you can live a great life, in my opinion.
And I love the fact that you mentioned, use your daughter as an example, saying that you advised her to, you know, look at a dual path. Yeah, you can get a paycheck and you can work for someone, but you can also have a more fulfilling life by doing in parallel something that you love. And I subscribe to that model. I did the exact same thing. I've always done that, where, it's always been what I do for them and what I do for myself. And what I do for myself is far more fulfilling. Okay, so last question, Dr. Watkins, and that is in reference to looking down the road at the 2016 presidential election. So here we are. Rumor is that, not old, but
You know
Hillary.
she's old.
Oh God, I'm trying to be. I'm trying not to be.
She ain't Raven Simone. She's old.
Okay, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could be running for president in 2016, which would be interesting, right? What do you have to say about, or what are your views about the how that would affect the African American? I mean, we've had a Clinton in office before. We know how the Clintons kind of think. We know the rhythm of the Clintons. I'm not saying Hillary is like Bill, but I'm just saying that during the Clinton years, a lot of folk made a lot of money. How do you perceive, or what do you think could happen in 2016 if Hillary is on the ticket?
I think that the presidency will be what we make it. The good thing about a Hillary Clinton presidency is that we are not under the illusion that she is a black woman. We're not, she can
Boyce,
eat.
wait, it'd be good.
No. I'm gonna be good. Honesty is good, and I think that if we are looking at her and we're saying,
Yeah.
okay, okay, white lady, we're gonna support you. We love you. We think you're great. What are you gonna do for us? I
Yes.
think that's what that becomes the disposition that I think we could have as a community. Although Bill kind of fooled a lot of people, but I think the black community overall is politically more intelligent than we were, say 10 years ago. I think the Obama presidency was a huge educational experience for us. And I think that we passed the test. I think we grew as a people. I think that as you saw the the perception of Obama change through time, where it went from darn near worshiping him like he was some kind of a religious figure to questioning certain things that we saw coming out of the White House. What's the result?
Yes.
Eric
Yes.
Holder, the Attorney General Eric Holder, makes probably the most significant incarceration policy announcement
Yes.
in 40 years.
Yes.
God bless him. So, and people have to understand that came from expressing your discontent, letting the politicians
That's
know
right.
that we expect this to be a quid pro quo. This is not a quid pro you, right? So ultimately, I think when we go into the Hillary presidency, if she is president, which I hope she
Yes.
is, I don't want a Republican in office. We
Yes.
we know the Republicans are pretty much owned by the wealthy, and they just their goal is to pretty much destroy the country. I really believe that. If Hillary's in office, I'm going to do the same thing I did when Barack was in office. I think a lot of public figures that have any sense. I think Cornel West, who I respect, I will stand by Cornel to the day I die. People think I'm crazy when I say this, but Cornel, despite some of the things he does that are a little bit further than I would go, like the name calling and stuff, we got to put that to the side. But if you look at the substance of his work, the consistency of his commitment, Cornel West is the closest thing that we have in America to Martin Luther King right now. He's a scholar. He's a scholar like Dr. King was. He's a man of God like Dr. King was. He's willing to speak up for the poor, which most people don't do, but Dr. King did that. Also, he's willing to lose money and lose friends to stand up for what he believes in.
That's true.
I can't tell you, Tawanna, how many people I have seen behind the scenes that have sold out the black community so they can maintain friends in the White House, so they can go to dinner with Barack and Michelle. You can't think about that type of stuff. And so ultimately, I think that when you talk about a Hillary Clinton presidency, you're going to see certain people that are going to be very consistent in terms of dealing with Hillary the same way we dealt with Barack, probably harsher, because that there's not going to be as much resistance. I think Julianne Malveaux will be very consistent in dealing with Hillary as she was with President Obama. Then you're going to see people kind of manipulating and sort of repositioning themselves so that they can be taken care of in the new administration. But ultimately, I think that over time we'll know who the true quote unquote freedom fighters are versus those who are kind of in it for other reasons. And I think the Hillary presidency can be good for us, but it's not going to be good just because she's in office. It's going to be good because we make a conscious effort to love our children and mobilize around the issues that matter to us. And we have the courage to go to those political leaders and say, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, black, white, male, female, my community matters to me, and you need to show that it matters to you, or we're not going to support you. It's really that simple. And I think if we have that attitude, I think we're going to be fine. Even if we have a Republican in office, I think we can actually advance under a Republican presidency more than under a Democratic presidency if we are more assertive. And the reason for that is because what determines the progress of our community is what we do, not what they do. It's what we do. So that's my perception of 2016.
We've been talking with Dr. Boyce Watkins, and we're in the C-suite, and it has been, as always, a pleasure talking with you. You're my friend. I love having you around. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to having you back on some other topic that I'm sure that will have me holding my face in my mouth going, oh God. So thank you so much, Boyce. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Towanna. The pleasure's all mine. Take care now.